Shall we start the class? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's start the class. Okay. Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today we'll discuss three important these bacterial diseases. Those are hemorrhagic septicemia, pneumonic pasteurellosis caused by this Pasteurella species, okay, and also known as shipping fever. Then about the anthrax and brucellosis. So I'll give you brief characteristic features of these three diseases today. So first one is about pneumonic pasteurellosis. Pasteurella maltosida actually, and other this species of this organism Pasteurella, so causing important this pneumonic disease. So that's why commonly sometimes it is known as pneumonic pasteurellosis, but there are some synonyms like hemorrhagic septicemia and shipping fever. Okay, so most commonly it is known as hemorrhagic septicemia. Okay, HS in short. So it is a very particular form of this acute pasteurellosis caused by this Pasteurella maltosida, where an acute or highly fatal septicemic type of this disease condition, that means septicemia, mostly in case of this cattle and buffaloes used to be there. And it's very highly contagious bacterial disease of the animal population. And main characteristic feature this characterized by edematous swelling in the neck region, dyspnea, pneumonia, as well as widespread hemorrhages in all the visceral organs caused by this Pasteurella maltosida. Earlier, this Menemia hemolytica cerebral 1, right? So, in many parts of this world and this globe, like this Africa, South Asia, China, even in this India. So, mostly this kind of this disease used to be this observed and seen at the beginning of the monsoon and this monsoon season, just after several months of the dry weather. Okay, but mostly they used to affect the cattle and buffaloes. And this very particular and this terminology, pasteurellosis, actually, I think you might have learned from, and this microbiology also was referred to designate and very acute septicemic disease. Okay, occurring most oftenly, the cattle, buffaloes, sometimes camel, sheep, goat, and even the pig. And for this some forms of these predisposing factors, okay, like this stress such as driving, transportation, shipping to feet of lots or inclement pasture, so these are predisposing to occur such kind of this disease. And so far the pathogenesis of this disease is concerned through ingestion of contaminated feed and water is the most common one, or sometimes the saliva coming out of excreted from this infected animal, okay, may contain large number of this Pasteurella organism. And this organism Pasteurella actually it used to be the normal inhabitant in the terminal bronchioles as well as the alveoli of the animals, okay, and it cannot invade the lungs because of the pulmonary defense. I'm talking about the healthy one, okay, but when there are some predisposing factors like stress, malnutrition, transportation, and climatic changes, so in these factors, when it is there under the stress condition and all these things, so this organism used to become virulent and flare up and starting showing the pathogenic roles by destructing the macrophages, particularly in the lungs. And other these viral agents like para-influenza 3, this bovine virus, and this bovine herpes virus, they may also, uh, this intercurrently affect, or they may have already affected this lungs or like. So in such cases, so after it is getting into, the affecting this macrophages in the system going into the circulation, so they used to affect, I mean, many of the vital organs, of course, lungs is one of the target organ, means parcerolosis, I mean, affects mainly the lungs, but other vital organs, when they are going into the circulation, and thereby they may this if this cause, I mean, this hypoxic condition, okay, I mean, due to this severe, I mean, this loss of these RBCs, I mean, these hemorrhagic lesions, losing these RBCs and all, as well as the toxin produced by this organism going into the system, leading to toxemia. So that's why the mechanism of that, in this case of this disease, vasculosis, mainly due to hypoxia and toxemia. Okay, and coming to the clinical signs, the incubation period may be this few hours to even 30 hours. But so far, in case of this acute, I mean, this condition, okay, acute death, it may occur within 6 to 24 hours just after the first clinical signs, when it is starting showing the signs. And mostly, most of the animals, affected animal, may be dull, they may be reluctant to move, showing the high rise of this body temperature, salivation, nasal discharges, and most commonly, means most characteristic feature, edematous swelling just under the pharynx to throat, as well as the brisket region. I'll show you the picture. Okay, and congested mucous membranes, and the respiratory problem, respiratory distress. There means one very particular sound, the term as gurgur sound on respiration, and the animal may go on collapse and death within 72 hours. And the rapid disease course, I mean, where the high heart incidences of this disease, I mean, when we are talking about the heart in a form like an appearance of edematous swelling, okay, I mean, particularly in the neck region, down there in the throat, and the brisket region particularly, it is highly suggestive for this disease, hemorrhagic septicemia. Means if you can see, observe this kind of the edematous swelling, particularly the neck region, just pharynx to throat region, and then the brisket region. Okay, so this swelling of the edematous swelling is highly suggestive for this disease. It is, I mean, susceptible, I mean, almost suspected for this disease condition. So this is the one. See, here I'm just from this pharynx to throat region, down there up to the brisket region, like this. So this swelling, okay, edematous extreme, very severe, and this swelling of the edematous swelling of this region from neck to the this brisket. So this is very much suggestive for this disease, as hemorrhagic septicemia. Then coming to the gross changes, as I have already mentioned you, that means when they are going into the system, I mean, circulation affecting many of the organs, okay, system. So, I mean, many and these parts of the body, like generalized type of these hemorrhagic lesions, and associated with that, edema and hyperemia may be there. Okay, and most commonly when we are talking about the edematous swelling, so edema may be confined. I mean, maybe there this around the head, neck, and brisket, as I have already shown you. And if you open those edematous swollen areas of the body, and or as well as the body cavities and all these things, right? Maybe thoracic and abdominal body cavities and all. So you will find serosinguinous type of this fluid, that means blood tinged fluid may be found. And petechial pinpoint hemorrhagic lesions may be found on many of the tissues and the lymph nodes. And the regional as well as the most of the lymph nodes used to be swollen and enlarged. And so far in the intestines, I mean, the GI tract is concerned, so you may find hemorrhagic type of this gastroenteritis, means stomach, I mean the rumen reticulum, I mean those, and then as well as this intestine. So gastroenteritis may be of severe, that means maybe hemorrhagic type. And so far the lungs, as I was talking about, means pneumonic type, I mean this bronchiolitis, when the lungs is affected, and that is most targeted organ. And the lungs used to be highly congested and consolidated. Mostly that is due to previous type of this bronchopneumonia, as I'm showing here. And very typical appearance, that is known as marbling appearance of the lungs, because of the previous substances this accumulated in between the alveoli, I mean this intra-alveolar spaces or intra-alveolar septa. Okay, so that makes very typical appearance, demarcation of all the alveolar lobes, lobules, and all these things. So that gives a marbling appearance. So the marbling appearance of the lungs is very much characteristic. Okay. So others, mostly these hemorrhagic lesions may be critical or little bit ecchymotic type, many of the organs and tissues, right? So these are some more pictures showing, this edematous swelling of the neck and up to the brisket region. After opening, you will find this heterogeneous type of this agitation there in this affected regions. And when you open this lungs, marbling appearance is very much, it is typical. And if you open this trachea also in this, there you may find some this frothy type of this fluid or serous type of this fluid also may be there in the trachea and all, right? Just a minute, some are waiting to join. So these are some more this picture showing the different organs and systems affected, showing severe this pneumonic region, hemorrhagic, this septicemic condition, and this sometimes means when we are talking about the this pneumonic pasteurellosis, where means I was talking about this prevenous type of this pneumonia and all. So these prevenous substances not only this affecting this lung parenchyma, sometimes the pleura, the outer covering of the lungs, may also be affected. So that's why sometimes little bit, this fibrinous pruritus and this adhesive type may also be there like this. Okay. And thoracic disc cavity as well as the body cavities that also used to be accumulated with edematous fluid, mainly this straw color like blood stained serous type of this fluid used to be there, right? So these are other these organs and this affected, this by this organism. And this is about a microscopic this section of the lungs. So odd type of this cell, odd sheet type of these cells used to be found in this lung tissue and this the cells and all like this. Okay, so that's why this kind of this pneumonia is also termed as odd cell pneumonia. So odd cell pneumonia means odd cell type of the cells found in this lung tissue and all under this microscopic examination. So this is very much characteristic so far your microscopic this characteristic feature of changes of this HS hemorrhagic pneumonia or pasteurellosis, pasteurella and this pneumonic pasteurellosis. Okay, then others, so far microscopic lesions means you may find prevenous type of this bronchopneumonia where interalveolar septa, okay, this space they may be filled with this this prevenous exudates, okay, and the hemorrhagic lesions may be found in the lymph nodes, then spleen, liver, kidneys, as well as in case of myocardium. And many of the these vessels, okay, in the intestinal mucosa and the submucosa there, you will find they are highly congested and hemorrhagic. Okay, and infiltration of inflammatory cells, mainly of neutrophils, macrophages, as well as lymphocytic cells may also be present. Okay. Then finally, diagnosis. So mainly basing on the clinical signs and symptoms and the lesions as we have discussed. So means you may have a little bit suspicion about this. This is mainly of the edematous swelling of the neck and this brisket region. Okay. So hanging down as I am showing you the picture, then means it is suggestive maybe of this then you can go for collecting the sample, from the fluid or the and all, then you can demonstrate very typical, this structure of this organism, this Pasteurella, means they are bipolar in nature, bipolar bacterial organism. So avoid, this type of this rot in the blood smear as I am showing here, like this, bipolar, both side, this. Okay, means bi means two, and both in two poles, both this and of the this organism and this structure, right? So bipole and this bipolar type of this staining used to be very much typical so far this organism Pasteurella is concerned. Then you can go for culture by collecting the nasal swabs and or as well as the washing, nasal washing, From there means you can go for isolation of this bacterial organism after culture and all. Then you can go for animal inoculation by using this laboratory animals like rabbit, mice, or guinea pigs also. Okay, and some this immunodiagnostic test like this ELISA for mass screening can also be conducted for detecting the bacterial this antigen and antibody and all this, right? And differential diagnosis for this disease should be done from other respiratory diseases, because some of the diseases may have some similar type of the clinical signs and symptoms. Even some these lesions also may be similar. So that's why you have to go for differential diagnosis, right? Then next disease is about this anthrax. Another very important this disease, so far your examination is also concerned, and highly zoonotic. So far the zoonotic importance of this disease is also concerned so far in the history also, like okay, it has been this considered as one of the most common the important zoonotic disease in this animal population. And even this it can affect the humans, means highly zoonotic. Okay, so the synonyms are splenic fever, Charbon, wool sorters disease. Okay, so I will tell you this why this wool sorters disease and all this, particularly in case of this sheep. When the affected animals used to show the this this spores of this organism bacillus and traces used to remain present there on the this wools. So when the people and collecting the wools, sharing wools and all this thing, particularly means professional hazard type, they may contract this infection, have some severe this respiratory problem, and even humans used to die from this. Like, so that kind, I'll show you along the pictures and all and describe that. And it is an a very or acute or sometimes acute and subacute soil-borne infection of the domestic as well as the wild animals. Okay, and mainly caused by this organism bacillus anthracis, and the disease used to be mainly characterized by sudden death, absence of rigor mortis, terry colored blood from the natural orifices like natural opening like your mouth, anus, and all this, nostril and all, right? From all these natural openings or these orifices, so there's to be oozing of terry colored blood and widespread hemorrhagic lesion of different parts and different on these organs. Okay, and this disease can be acquired from the bacterial spores of this bacillus anthracis that usually survive in the soil for many years. Suppose when you open the carcass after the death of this animal, where you have thrown it out, for example, or lying dead on the this any place and all these things. So after opening this carcass and all these things, blood used to be coming on, and organism used to form, used to come out, and in the presence of this oxygen, and they used to get form, and they used to form spores. So these spores can remain survive in the soil for many years, and this disease, that's why being very, this dangerous zoonotic disease, and affects all the animals, including humans, and it has also been used as biological warfare agents. So far, some history behind this this disease is concerned. Okay, during 2001, some anthrax attacks were there in the United States. Okay, so like some terrorist act, like some people these terrorists and all this intentionally, they may utilize, they may leak out, and this kind of this organism spread out this disease and all, and they can attack even this human, because it is highly zoonotic. So it can be utilized as biological warfare agents by this this anthrax spores and all these things, right? And these are some of the history I have collected for the this anthrax bioterrorism. Okay, so you can go through it also, like some history of this sending some postal these letters through the this United States Postal Service and all, and that letter actually that was containing the this spore of this bacillus and this anthracis and all. So while opening and the tongue contaminated and reading, like people used to that and the saliva from the tongue and the opening the these pages and all this, right? So like that, people may contract this infection from those. So this way, it was happen some incidences. This, and it has been this what to say, this suggested that some people particularly in the Journal of Medical Toxicology. I mean, a school student have suggested that, I mean, by using this electric iron, because of this hottest setting, I mean, when you are setting this electric iron and all this, and it's just rough, this ironing, this, what to say, postal envelopes and all these things. So it can be killed. So that maybe I'm just decontaminating the I'm this postal service and this mail envelopes and all these letters and all. So like that, some history is behind is there. That means this organism bacillus anthracis can be utilized as biological warfare agents, and it may also, I mean, it has already happened this in United States, and this postal services of sending what to say, this anthrax spores through the these letters, I mean, through envelopes and all this, right? So these are those, I mean, these proofs for the, these incidences. I mean, okay. So please go through it about this history. I mean, it can it means simply just noted that means this organism can be utilized as biological warfare agent. Still, I mean, can be. Okay. Then coming to transmission and spread, maybe through contamination, ingestion of the contaminated feed and water. As I have already mentioned you that the spores of this organism, bacillus anthracis, used to remain survive in the soil. Okay, so when it is contaminating the feed and water, or sometimes the bone meal and offals of the this dead animals, they may also be the main sources of this infection, and the lying on the floor or like I'm this somewhere and this, and then it may this contaminate the feed and water and all. If it is ingested by the healthy animals and all, they may contract the infection. Or sometimes through wound infections, like when you or suppose the animals are having some broken skin. Okay, so in such cases, skin infections, one very typical, I will show you the picture just after this. Okay, that is commonly known as malignant carbuncle, particularly in case of this man while handling the samples. Okay, the drugs infected samples or the this for the laboratory diagnosis or many other or during post-mortem examination and all without using these gloves and all these things. You may contract the infection if you have some broken wind. Okay, injured part, this wound is there on your this body surface like your hand and all these things. So that may create a development of very painful malignant type of this tumor like this condition that is termed as malignant carbuncle and very painful. Okay, then another is that is about this contract. Then through inhalation of the spores of this anthracis organism, most cases I was giving the example of your, wool shearing, this while sharing, cutting the wools of from animal like sheep and all these things. So people may inhale, okay, the this spores from those this wools shared this are cut from those this affected animals, and they may get this infection. Then fourth, through biting flies like Stomoxis and Tetanus, this type of these flies, they may transmit mechanically the vegetative form of this organism, this Bacillus anthracis. Then fifthly, maybe through vaccination. So in case of these animals, the spores of this organism used to vegetate and cause disease if the vaccine is not sufficiently attenuated. Means attenuated vaccine should be used, but if it is not properly attenuated, okay, the spores contain there in this vaccine which has not been this properly attenuated. So that may this live vaccine type then may create this infection in these animals, or even sometimes rarely. I mean, so far the spreading of this disease is concerned. Okay, so mainly by the streams, biting flies, then the carnivores and wild birds, as well as the movement of the infected hides, bone meal here, as well as the wool. That may be spread out from one place to another, from one country to another, this country, right? So this is this anthrax cycle. Okay, we have already this and different routes this infection and how it may this and after this getting infection, animal dies, and from that this opening of the carcass is not advisable. Okay, whenever means you and this open the carcass and all this blood will come out which contain the vegetative form of the organism. So in the presence of this this they form spore, and this spore is highly resistant, and they may remain survive for many years on this in the soil. So the respiratory form of the drugs mainly results from the inhalation of the spores or the eating of meat from the infected, these animals from disease and drugs. And so the key forms concern is I've already mentioned about malignant, this must painful. So when one fatal form of the disease, it used to be this appeared through the skin abrasions with Kitrinous forms, you may have very painful malignant type of discarbonables on the skin surface. Okay, but it is not fatal, non-fatal. Coming to pathogenesis, after just getting into this anthrax spore through ingestion, then it will go to the pharynx, there this small intestine, and once they reach to the intestine and all, but it cannot be affected by the gastric juice. Okay, so they will form the vegetative form of this organism. Then they will go into the lymphatics, affecting the. They will affect. They will go into the lymphatic. This resistance and there lymphatics. Then they will go into the circulation. Okay, the circulation and the rate and the bone marrow. Then formulating the form of the safety item. Then going in our form. Right. So how is this septicemic condition have presence of this organism in the this circulation and all. So very severe form of this septicemic condition. You may be there, and that may this lead to that of that. Okay. Actually, this organism bacillus and this the this bacilli used to be lice after of the cell and this lysis and all. Some toxins used to be produced, released from the and these toxins can damage the vascular endothelium of the affected animals. And once the vascular endothelium is affected, the associated pathologies like hemorrhages, stasis, leading to exudation in many of the body cavities and impairment of the blood coagulation of this toxin, some of the this toxin, right? And entry of this through of this and through this broken skins. After that, go into the septicemia means presence of this organism blood. And these processes used to have and exotoxin and the toxin and this it may cause and the lethality of the affected animal and containing three components. Okay, the exotoxin produced by the this bacteria, this bacillus and process. Those components of factors, edema factor, or factor 1, it is ramen and containing adenyl cyclase. And second, this component is protective antigen, or term also known as factor 2, contains anti-phagocytic activity, which is having. Then third one is highly lethal type, this lethal factor, or factor 3, which used to stimulate macrophages. Then they will this help in the production of oxidizing radicals, cytokines like interleukin 1 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, leading to shock and death of the affected animal. Okay, this lethal factor. By the action of this oxidative radical, then the cytokines like interleukin 1 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. So they may cause death, means sudden this shock and death of the this affected animals, right? So these are some of them, this schematic diagram for those this pathogenesis is described. And coming to clinical sign and symptom, as I have already mentioned, you get one very typical sign in what to say, detectable. You can suspect this. Okay, that cherry color is a bit black and dark red cherry color. Our blood is discharging out or coming out of the body naturally. It's like nostril, mouth, and in the female. So this is very much in this for that. I'm sorry. I mean, you can by observing this type of this daily disease. Okay. And initially, the animal used to be very good. They may show high rise of this body temperature, and they may be very much excited following the depression, and they may show difficulty in breathing and uncoordinated and as this convulsion. Okay. And once that, as I have already mentioned, that this organism may cause, I mean, damage as well, right? And this pathological changes. So that's why the body also may be, I mean, this having just kind of well. One more thing is that, of course, I mean, when you open, I mean, the carcass, of course, it is not advisable, but when with very much precautionary and all, if you open and all, right, then you will find that the blood is unclotted one. That is very much important. And and this more and this symptoms as I am talking about and this thing. So the animal may be having this high rise of this body temperature, this debilitated difficulties, disorientation, and ultimately death. And the toxins produced by this organism into the human, they be transmitted throughout the body, and these toxins used to cause reduction in oxygen in the blood, leading to edema, kidney failure, shock, and death. Okay, and this kind of this discharge is little bit frothy and the blood tinge. Okay, blood mix, maybe from the nasal orifices like from the nostril, in addition to discharges from this orifice. Nostril may also be there. And the mortality, sudden mortality may be very high, even up to just 90%. And one time when you see the dead carcasses and all these things, and very typically means you may find that the animals lying dead on the ground and all this, and they may show very typical position known as show horse position. Okay, that means they may lie on their back and side with their legs showing upright. Okay, that is known as show horse position, as I'm showing here. Okay, like this. So these are some more pictures showing, I mean, this susceptible and suspected cases that because of the blood or color blood oozing out from the nose, mouth, nostril, even from eyes like this, see, then and from this end and all, right? Then, so far justification or reasoning is concerned, sometimes you may be asked that why rhinitis is absent in case of anthrax. Okay, rigor mortis used to be absent. Okay, so this rigor mortis means contraction of the muscles, means rigor mortis after death. So this is dependent on ATP in order for it to occur. Okay, however, the organism Bacillus anthracis, anthrax bacilli, they have a toxin commonly known as edema factor, or it is calmodulin, this calmodulin dependent adenylate cyclase, and this is a toxin which inhibits the stiffening of the muscles by constantly stimulating the release of cyclic AMP, so that the cyclic AMP level in the body is never low. So that's why means muscle will not contract when they are and this inhibiting the stiffening of the muscles. Okay, constantly by releasing or by stimulating to release cyclic this AMP. Okay, so that's why this animal carcass after that, that will not show any rigor okay, muscular contraction, that will not be there. So that's why this rigor is absent in this disease enter. And thus, even after the death, what happened? This supplies the muscles with adequate cyclic AMP to be relaxed even after a prolonged period. So that's why the muscle will remain relaxed. There won't be any stiffening or contraction of the muscles. So that is the reason that this rigor mortis is absent in case of this disease and drugs. Right. Then coming to gross pathology, means that is one, and that is also sign, as I have already mentioned you, that terry color blood from the nasal orifices. Actually, that should come under and this clinical sign and symptom. But sometimes when you conduct postmortem examination, it may be shown as this external examination or external finding also. And the blood doesn't clot. Okay, unclotted condition of the blood, that is due to the this fibrinolytic property of polydiglutamic acid capsule of this organism. Okay, this organism having a capsule, so that capsule contains a substance, it is known that is known as polydiglutamic acid, and which is very and this having the property of fibrinolysis. Okay, that's why blood doesn't clot if the fibrins are already lysed, no fibrination and all this, right? So blood doesn't clot. Then the animal may show blotting and decomposition, and there may be great enlargement of the spleen with the red pulp, as I am showing here. If you open and cut section of the this affected liver at this spleen, so liver used to be much enlarged, great enlargement, as well as highly hemorrhagic. Okay, particularly the red pulp, these areas and all. And widespread hemorrhagic lesions may be found on the serous surfaces of many of the visceral organs. Okay, and subcutaneous edema may be found under the ventral parts of the body as well as the inguinal region. Okay, then coming to microscopic this examination of the affected these organs and tissues. So this organism bacillus anthracis, I mean the bacilli as well as the spores can be observed, can be demonstrated present in the blood, or I mean by showing the blood smear, I mean under this microscope and all this, you can demonstrate the presence of this organism, right? Then the spleen may show, I mean it may show the presence of hemorrhagic lesions as well as accumulation of blood, particularly in the red pulp area, and as well as the lymph nodes, liver, lungs, and kidneys may also be, I mean just showing these hemorrhagic lesions, and degenerative and as well as necrotic changes may be noted in the these organs like your kidney and this liver. Okay, so these are some more these pictures of this, I mean different this histological sections. Okay, I mean of the this lymph node and this medicinal lymph node maybe, or maybe this is in case of this spleen showing the this presence of this organism and this bacillus anthracis, the rod-shaped these organisms, right? And this pathogenic organism, I mean, as I was talking about this bacillus anthracis, they can produce spores, and when they are environmentally stressed, and once they form the spores, these spores which contain genetic metals of the bacteria, and it may be remain encased in a top coat, the covering, the capsule, what we call, and that is highly resistant to harsh environmental conditions like your drying, heat, as well as even this starvation. So that's why it means they become very this resistant, highly resistant to any this environmental these factors and all this. And there are reports even that the anthrax spores can remain viable more than 50 years in the soil, right? They may remain survive and this viable. And the spores can germinate and form the vegetative as well as the disease producing form when the environmental conditions are favorable, right? And the spore forming characteristic as well as the facts of the bacterial organism unlike your, this most spore forming pathogen bacterial organisms. So it can readily grow in the presence of oxygen, particularly. Okay, means unless in the absence of the oxygen, they cannot this form the this spore and this and as well as the what to say this infective stage of this organism. Okay, so in the absence and in the presence of this oxygen only, they can just follow the spores and all this. And the this organism, this one of the most top and this sources is biological agent of because of this resistant and highly its nature. Through inhalation, contamination, or this from this is spreading through your these things or like so history also like so. This organism has already utilized. As what to say. This. These agents and spreading among the human people and can also even utilize as biological warfare agents to fight terrorists again intentionally some people if they wish, right? That's why the person should be taken up and the disease itself should be controlled among this environment before spreading towards the or transmitting towards the human, right? And what are the symptoms so far zoonotic importance is concerned in those humans? Okay, so three different types. You may have. Okay. One is skin cutaneous form of this lesion, the most common one of this disease anthrax in human. So mostly when people are, this materials for laboratory examination or conducting post-mortem examination, they may contract the infection through the break or this wound injuries they have on this skin and all. Okay, then they may develop very painful this condition as I was talking about this malignant carbuncles like this, very painful on the skin like malignant carbuncles, and this person, getting this infection through this cutaneous or injuries and all this, they may show very much itching sensation when they start this affected by the organism and a large boil or sore may appear just before this in the initial stage of this this malignant carbuncle, and the sore becomes covered by a black scab later on. And if not treated, if it is not treated in such condition in this stage and all, so the infection can spread towards the lymph node as well as the bloodstream, and it may cause fatality. This severe this septicemic condition and all, and means even by production of these toxins and all these things, then it may kill. The person also like. Otherwise, it is not fatal, particularly the skin or this cutaneous form. Then so far inhalation is concerned, through inhalation of the spores and drug spores and all, then people may contract the infection. Then they may show the clinical signs of high rise of this body temperature and highly fatigue condition, malaise, and a cough, this coughing, and with chest pain. Okay, and this high body, this temperature, rise of this body temperature with rapid pulse rate and this severe difficulty in breathing maybe this followed is within 2 or 5 days. Okay, after this infection and inhalation anthrax, this is mostly this fatal, leading to severe this pneumonic changes and all. And this medicinal, this hemorrhagic medicinitis. One another problem is that, so that may kill this person and all. Then gastrointestinal form. In this form means ingestion of the infected or undercooked meat. That means infected with this this disease, this organism based anthracis. So if meat is not properly cooked and taken by some people and all, right, so that may be responsible for contracting this and showing the signs of this disease and all, like, and they may show rise of this body temperature, severe abdominal pain, loose or watery bowel movements, bloody diarrhea, as well as bloody vomition. Okay, it's in those intestinal form. Then these are some more these pictures showing this skin lesions. Okay, anthrax, this cutaneous form of this anthrax. and that I was talking about, this malignant carbuncles and all. Yeah, these are some this example of 17-year-old girl. She was probably exposed to contaminated soil and got this infection through on this types of products and all, like, okay. And sometimes the professional hazard, as I was talking about, and mostly the veterinarians and the laboratory workers, when they are handling the samples or conducting for the examination and for treatment and all these things, they may have the chance of getting this disease, this anthrax. Okay, and the very name, what is this is name, this anthrax, this terminology. So this is nothing but, what to say, the origin of this word anthrax. Okay, it is due to the black coloration, means happen in the affect this part of the body, and particularly on the skin. Okay, and which has been derived from the Greek word anthrakis. Okay, anthrakis means gold, is black in color, right? So because of that, means the name, this anthrax has been just given. It has been derived from that Greek word anthrakis, meaning coal is there, right? And when sometimes it may target or it may affect or this colonize there, just localize there in the brain tissue and affect even the meninges and all this. Okay, so anthrax meningitis may occur, and here the tissues surrounding the brain, can be this affected very severely, causing massive hemorrhages, this lesion hemorrhages, and created this may create a this very typical coloration of the this skull, this when you open the skull, okay, the upper brain are like this, this. So it will give a very typical this appearance that some the person died of this affected with this, this mesh that is using, or person is using a cap on his head, right? So that's why it is termed as cardinal's cap, like this. It is using like, it is putting a cap on his head, like that. So this is due to the affection of the brain, particularly the meninges and all these things, and giving a very typical and this causing a very severe, this massive type of this hemorrhagic, these lesions, and it turns into very this that is black color and all this, and looking like that he or she is using this cap on his head, right? That's why it has been given this name, cardinal's cap. These are those, this what is it, this condition anthrax meningitis. Okay, and this meningitis occurs, this maybe from the hematogenous route, or sometimes lymphatic spread of the organism bacillus anthracis towards the central nervous system, affecting the meninges and all. And in such cases, if the person died, conduct this autopsy, okay, in those cases and all these things, then you can find this. You can find just kind of this very dark red meninges. In those affected, these humans have died of this anthrax and all these things. And if you open this skull and see that, so the brain will show such kind of this color. This dark red color with, that giving that, and he or she is using it just cap on his head and all this. So it has been given this name, cardinal's cap, right? And regarding that wool sorter disease, sometimes on the, this what is that? These short notes in case of this exam, you may come across this very commonly. Okay, or many other question types and all this associated with this wool sorters disease, or what is wool sorter disease definition, short note, and all these things. As I have already mentioned you that particularly the persons who are engaged in shedding of wool in case of the, the sheep and all these things, right? So then, the organism, the spore form of this organism, bacillus anthracis, they may remain present in this wool and all, right? And while shearing and cutting the wool and all, they may inhale, okay, the dust particles coming out of these wools and all these things, which contains many of these organisms, okay, bacillus and this organism, maybe in the spore form and all, like. So that may be inhaled in and may cause severe pneumonia. And means the person in such conditions, they may show initially very this chilling, this chill, coughing, as well as respiratory problem like dyspnea and with this rapid pulse rate, and that may be followed by extreme cardiovascular collapse. In case of, this, what to say, particularly this human, through this inhalation of the spores through, the dust particles, or, while this cutting, sharing the wools and all these things, right? And this may cause, and this may develop, or, this a very severe, highly fatal hemorrhagic lesions. I did two samples. Okay, let me see that class. So in that case, that may affect the mediastinum. Okay, as I'm showing here, this part, this mediastinum. Okay, anatomically you must be knowing this, right? So there, very severe hemorrhagic or inflammatory condition of this mediastinum. So that is known as highly fatal hemorrhagic mediastinitis. Okay, that is nothing but due to the inhalation of the spores when you are handling the contaminated wool or the hair of the affected sheep, the animals, the people are engaged, in sharing and the cutting of this wool, and also wool sorting and all, right? For sorting out of this wool also, collecting, sharing and all this. That's why it is this professional hazard. So they may have this problem, and it is highly fatal. They may die because of this severe, hemorrhagic mediastinitis. Okay, so that is about this wool sorter disease, and this is the picture. Showing about this hemorrhagic mediastinitis in such cases. You may find the mediastinum. Okay, the lymph nodes this around the mediastinum also may be affected, very much enlarged, swollen, and this hemorrhagic and all. So particularly this very particular this anatomical, this what to say, structure, what we call this mediastinum, may be highly enlarged, and this on this inflammatory reaction with severe hemorrhagic lesions and all, and with respiratory troubles, and very much respiratory and these troubles and all. So the person may already, this used to die in wool sorters disease. Okay, so that is about the, this brief idea about, this wool sorter disease and all. And finally, diagnosis of this disease and drugs. So it may be based on the clinical signs and symptoms and the lesions, and you can go for demonstration of the organism in the blood smear. But so far, blood smear, you have to collect the blood smear from the ear bands. You should not open, whenever, we should not go for opening the carcass. It is not advisable, because once open, the this organism will get out of the this one with along with the blood, and in the presence of this oxygen, they will become, or they will form spore. And once a spore is formed, it will remain viable for more than 30-40 years also, even record is there, right? So that's why, that's why collection of blood, without opening the carcass and all this from the ear band, you can this kind of. So post-mortem examination, opening the carcass is not advisable. And some immunodiagnostic techniques like this ELISA and agar gel precipitation test also can be conducted for detection of the bacterial organism, this antigen and antibody. And one very particular technique or test is which is known as Ascoli's test, which is nothing but a thermoprecipitation test. Indeed, and in that type of this technique, you have to collect a piece of hide or tissue from the affected animal, or means the animal who died of this from this disease suspected, right? Then you just boil that and this piece of the hide or the tissue, in the water. It will just boil it. It's just boil it, and after boiling, the extract is obtained, and the clear supernatant fluid just obtained used to be layered on a very non-precipitating serum. Okay, so if it is a positive case, that means the samples, the tissue hide, or the this collected from the that animal, or this the animal suspect is the suffering from that. If it is a positive case of this disease, anthrax, anthrax, then there will be a formation of whitish ring at the junction of the two fluids. Okay, so that is a positive case. By technique how to conduct school stage. Then you can go for animal inoculation test by using mouse. In that case, death of the mouse may occur within 24 hours if it is of and the sample has been collected from an infected animal suffering from this. Your anthrax and all. So if it is inoculated that to that this lab animal mouse, it will die within 24 hours. Right. Then differential diagnosis can also be done, should be done from following diseases like lightning conditions, pathological condition or disease like lightning stroke, black quarter or BQ in short, hemorrhagic septicemia, babesiosis, acute lightning, even your snake bites. So in all these disease conditions, there may be some similarities, maybe in clinical signs and symptoms like this oozing of this bloody for the blood and this oozing from the nasal orifices. Okay, unclotting blood, and suppose in case of this snake bite also, and then oozing of this blood tints, this fluid from the nasal orifices, maybe there in this lightning stroke also. Like then we have already discussed about BQ, then hemorrhagic septicemia also. But sometimes sudden death, this may occur in case of this acute lead poisoning also. So because of the sudden death of this animal, you may suspect for poisoning like lead poisoning. Okay. Then in babesiosis also some of this lesion, hemorrhage lesions and on the kidney or like some other part. So it may be this suspected for. So we have to go for differentially diagnosis from the disease is listed down listed here. Right. So that is all. This is just lastly I'm just showing one picture under the microscope and all. If you see properly after staining and all these things, right? Very typical. This specific stain known as toluidine blue stain. So you can demonstrate the presence of this organism. The organism is I'm showing here, containing the covering this capsule. Okay, capsule containing short chains of these bacillus and traces. This is in particularly in bovine spleen. Okay, so this way you can demonstrate this organism. And this was as we have already discussed about the technique is called stage. Means white ring formation in positive cases, right? So please go through it. As we have already discussed. So that's all about these two diseases: hemorrhagic septicemia and this anthrax. But it will be. Time is already over. I will continue the other diseases in the next class. Okay, uh, that's all for today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.